CEO shocked as security searches singled Dad's bag. What his mother revealed transformed the moment. Michael pushed his cleaning cart through the gleaming lobby of the corporate high-rise, lost in thought. The polished marble floor sparkled under the fluorescent lights, reflecting the high-powered executives brushing past him, wrapped up in their own worlds. They barely noticed him, a janitor in uniform, just a shadow lurking between their conversations and multi-million-dollar deals. But tonight, as fate would have it, his mundane routine would be shattered in an instant. After a long day of scrubbing away the traces of corporate hustle, he felt the familiar weight of his past hanging overhead, the unfulfilled dreams of being an artist sifting through his mind like dust he was meant to remove. Suddenly, the security guards blocked his path. The CEO strode behind them, perfectly tailored suit sharply contrasting with Michael's faded uniform. "What is going on?" the CEO inquired, his voice cut through the air. "We need to search his bag," one guard replied, eyes narrowed on Michael, who felt his heart race, flooding with shame and fear. Embarrassment clawed at him as whispers began to ripple through the crowd surrounding them. He was the janitor being treated as a criminal, red-hot judgments burning into his soul. Michael heard their hushed voices, the syllables twisting his gut tighter. "Is he stealing? Who does he think he is?" They scoffed. Snapshots of his life flashed in his mind, the cramped apartment where his mother nurtured his artistic dreams with rapt attention, all the while painting away their struggles. She had been a celebrated artist once, yet the world never truly recognized her talent. Could he? Or had he locked that door behind him too? The wall of status and respect felt insurmountable now. As the guards rifled through his backpack, Michael's breath quickened, his muscles tense. Inside were scattered sketches, his lone attempts at reclaiming the dream images of bright colors and landscapes he'd never painted. An ache in his chest lingered, reflecting the dreams he de-shelved for survival. But just then, he noticed the flicker of recognition in the CEO's eyes as he opened his mouth and said something that shifted the entire moment. An unexpected beam of interest between a powerful man and a janitor, just for a split second. "Wait," the CEO interjected, stepping forward. "What is that?" "Your drawings." Michael felt a curiosity bloom amidst the storm of chaos. The guards ceased their search as both their attention and the audience's draw shifted towards him. The air was charged with something he never anticipated, hope amidst judgment. "Just some sketches." Michael hesitated, his voice trembling slightly, revealing the depths of his vulnerability. He thought about his mother, every sacrifice she'd made, the beauty she shared with him. The spark ignited by her unwavering belief in him overshadowed the humiliation he was facing at that moment. "They're not much," he mumbled, fearing judgment even more after playing the mental film of letting her down. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The tension grew, an electric hum thrumming in the air. The CEO's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he probed deeper about Michael's mother, revealing pieces of art he once admired in galleries, pieces unwoven from the fabric of expectation and time. The dissonance sharpened, agitation boiled under the surface, asking if Michael would dare share his sketches, truly unveil the part of himself he kept hidden in scraps. Would he risk losing the tenuous grasp of financial security in pursuit of a passion long dormant? As the murmurs shifted from disdain to intrigue, Michael wrestled with himself. This moment could redefine everything: the shadows of the past, the toxic judgments around him, and the legacy of his mother. It was a crossroads that demanded courage, leaving him in a whirlwind of uncertainty, standing on the precipice of a choice that loomed larger than any he'd ever made. Would he take that leap? Would he step toward his mother's dream, or retreat into the safe, dull existence he clung to? And with the corporate world bearing down on him, would he dare to reclaim what he'd lost? The air felt electric, each passing second stretching like taffy as Michael stood frozen, confronted by the CEO's probing gaze. This was a moment of visceral clarity, a confrontation not just with an audience but also with the man he had become, a caretaker, a survivor, a janitor. Yet there lay inside him, like a dormant seed, the yearning of an artist longing to blossom. "Are they just sketches?" the CEO asked, his tone softening, almost inviting. "Or is there more behind your drawings?" Michael swallowed hard, the lump in his throat akin to the weight of expectations he had long abandoned. Images flashed across his mind, the vivid murals his mother had painted, the late-night conversations about color and form, dreams that seemed woven from the very fabric of his childhood. A desperate urge to reclaim his creative identity surged within him. But could he? Could a man with a mop in hand transform back into a brush-wielding artist? The murmurs in the crowd crescendoed, shifting from derision to curiosity. Intrigue fanned the flames of his fear, turning it into something palpable. He could either step forward into the light of revealing his true self or shrink back into the shadows where security lay, confined by the walls of his past decisions. "This is just a phase," he muttered under his breath, his thoughts racing like birds from a startled tree. "I can't risk everything for a few sketches." Yet, paradoxically, his mother's gentle voice echoed in his mind, "Art is a part of you, Michael. Don't let anyone take that away." The tension coiled tighter, each passing moment trailing shadows of doubt. "Consider showing them," the CEO pressed, gently but insistently, disrupting his turbulent thoughts. "There's beauty in that vulnerability. The world craves authenticity." The guard's hand loosened as the sketches were handed over, but Michael hesitated, the uncertain road unfurling before him like foggy visions. What if the CEO marveled at his artistry only to discard it as a mere novelty? What if he belittled his work? The fear of rejection loomed larger than the moment itself. Yet, here was an opportunity, a chance to bridge the chasm between his dual identities. The whispers of the crowd transformed into muffled encouragement, giving breath to a vision half forgotten. He could pick up the fragments of hope slowly gathering in his heart. "This is," he began, his voice quaking but steadying with every syllable. "This is my mother's legacy, not just mine. Through these sketches, I can finally give her the voice she was never allowed." He felt a surge of defiance rising against the years of neglect toward himself, fighting the tide of solitary survival. Suddenly, the weight of humiliation was eclipsed by the weight of possibility. Could sharing his art be the catalyst for change, for both him and the spectators who viewed him as a mere custodial figure? The paradox danced furiously in Michael's mind, illuminating questions he had buried. Who was he if not an artist? Who would he allow himself to become if he stepped into the light? Before he could retreat back into apprehension, he took a step forward. "These sketches, they're mine, they carry something I thought I'd lost. If I don't share them now, I might never have the chance again." As he spoke, the atmosphere shifted, the air ripe with the promise of transformation. The murmurs of onlookers blended into a symphony of encouragement, testing the boundaries of embarrassment. The CEO nodded, a glimmer of admiration shining in his eyes. Michael's pulse quickened, he was peering over the edge and felt the urge to leap. But would he be able to hold on to that fleeting sense of courage? The possibility exhilarated him even as doubt nipped at his heels. In a world where ambition often demanded sacrifice, could he navigate the balance between art and livelihood? The question haunted him, echoing amongst the murmurs of the crowd. Then, with a final deep breath, he unfolded the sketches, ready to meet the possibility of rejection head-on. Uncertainty twisted in his gut, but determination coursed through his veins. As he stepped toward the CEO, the specter of his mother's ambitions filled the spaces around him, her encouragement, her love, urging him to emerge anew. And just as he unveiled the sketches, inviting the world to witness his passion, the CEO's expression changed dramatically, igniting a challenge that would determine Michael's future. "You've hidden this from the world," the man declared, "but I see potential for so much more than just sketches. The moment has come for you to consider, are you ready to be seen?" That question rang out, weaving doubt and hope together, leaving Michael teetering on the brink of an irretrievable leap into the unknown. Would he embrace this new pathway, or would he retreat once more into obscurity? Michael felt the weight of the question pressing down on him like an anvil. Each layer of expectation would not lift until he grappled with the reality of it. The sketches, suddenly heavier in his hands, seemed to pulse with the rhythm of his heartbeat. He looked up, meeting the CEO's piercing gaze, a reflection of someone who dared to see beyond the facade he had meticulously crafted. This was not just about art, it was about acknowledgement, acceptance, and the courage to reclaim his identity. What did it mean to be seen? The thought crept in, unsettling and profound. In the blink of an eye, Michael visualized a path littered with missed opportunities, tarnished by years of self-neglect. His mind raced through the myriad of decisions that had led him here, each moment a stepping stone on the tumultuous journey of balancing necessity with passion. The murmurs of the crowd sharpened, transforming into a single cacophonous note that reverberated against the walls of his mind. His mother's spirit loomed larger, a steadfast presence urging him. Wasn't it she who taught him to embrace the colors of life, to infuse passion into every stroke? Art, she would say, is the heartbeat of existence. But Michael's hands trembled as he clutched the sketches. Could he really let them go? What if the CEO dismissed them? What if they were not enough? Each thought was a whirlpool sucking him down, suffocating ambition beneath the sheer weight of fear. Yet a flicker within surged, a seedling breaking through a winter-frosted earth, awakening incrementally. He rasped, losing the bravado with every heartbeat. I want to be seen. I want to remember. The words felt liberating yet terrifying, a line drawn between the past and a future uncertain but ripe with potential. As he stepped forward, the audience held their breath. For the first time, the sketches possessed a life, a rhythm that warranted respect. They were not just representations of his mother's legacy, they were memorials to his dreams, embodiments of vulnerability, a tapestry woven from longing and creativity. With each drawing he revealed, whispers spread like wildfire. He felt the emotional tide swelling, rising to crest and crash against the rocks of self-doubt. This was affirmation, this was transformation. The sketches, raw yet infused with emotion, began to soften the gazes of the crowd. No longer was he just an anonymous janitor, but a man reclaiming his story, turning anonymity into a declaration. What are you prepared to do with this gift? The CEO pressed, leaning forward, eyes gleaming with newfound intrigue. There's a fire here, Michael. Don't you see? The challenge laced in his words shook the ground beneath him. A weighty decision loomed, a leap towards uncertainty that could either shatter his world or help build the life he had continuously denied. The line between fear and exhilaration blurred, creating a potent cocktail that intoxicated him. In this moment of clarity, Michael realized the discomfort of exposure was merely a precursor to growth. But a question gnawed at him. Could he truly convert this spark into something that illuminated his path forward? He pondered the financial realities, the criticisms he might face, and the inevitability of challenges that accompanied stepping onto the precipice of artistic pursuit. Still, the specter of his mother lingered. Will you allow your fears to dictate your future? She seemed to ask, an echo drumming against the walls of his mind. As the murmurs transformed again into a pulse of excitement, enticing possibilities flickered. He was standing at a crossroads, where ambition brushed against reality. The air thickened around him as Michael realized this was not a simple choice. It was a defining moment. Are you ready to take the leap? The CEO's voice was steady but charged, a vital anchor in the swirling chaos of his thoughts. Michael inhaled deeply, the scent of resolve pushing away the clouds of hesitation. Yes, he finally declared, not just to the CEO but to himself, an affirmation echoing from deep within him, rich with grit and determination. But lurking behind that resolution was a deeper truth that gnawed at his gut. Once he leapt, there would be no turning back. As he faced the crowd, a wave of adrenaline coursed through him, igniting an unquenchable thirst for change. The next step beckoned, dangling the tantalizing promise of a future yet to be written, and just as he prepared to embrace it, an unexpected voice called out from the back. I hope you're ready for the fallout. The challenge was clear, the stakes had risen. Would he remain steadfast? Or was the fallout a price he was willing to pay? The atmosphere shifted almost palpably as the voice called out, slicing through Michael's resolve like a razor. He could feel the eyes of the crowd fixating on him, their collective breath held, anticipation crackling in the air. The room started to close in, each face a mirror of expectations, doubts, and curiosity. The elegant veneer of the gathering clashed violently with his internal turmoil. Did he really want to embrace this unpredictability? Michael's gaze darted toward the source of the challenge. A figure loomed in the back, arms crossed, a figure draped in skepticism. This stranger seemed unwavering, a stark contrast against the supportive audience. Was this person questioning his authenticity? It was one thing to share his art, another entirely to expose himself to scrutiny. The thrill of newfound courage that had surged moments ago began to hang in the balance. The weight of that single statement reverberated, awakening every fear he had tried to bury. What fallout? He managed, his voice steadier than he felt. Was it merely a challenge, or was it a warning? You think showing your sketches makes you an artist? The voice was contemptuous, a low drawl that cut through the excitement like a cold wind. You're just a janitor playing dress-up. Michael's stomach knotted. That old label, the one he was desperate to shed, had reared its ugly head with merciless vigor. It felt as though a trapdoor had opened beneath him, exposing the truths he feared might surface. But behind that sense of dread lay a steely streak of determination. He could choose how to respond, shape this moment in a way that honored not just his art but the very essence of who he was. Gathering his thoughts, he spoke over the whispers, eyes ablaze. No, I'm not just a janitor. I'm an artist. These aren't mere sketches, they are extensions of my soul. The words spilled forth, ignited by the fire that the CEO had seen earlier. He was not merely defending himself, he was reclaiming his narrative, transforming that label into a poignant part of his journey. The murmurs shifted once more, igniting waves of support amid the dissent. Michael felt the pulse of the crowd change, the room taking on a tangible energy. If he could declare the truth of his identity with such ferocity, perhaps they would hear it too. Art is born from struggles, he continued, voice cutting through any remaining skepticism. It is a reflection of life of love, loss, and everything in between. To dismiss that, to dismiss me, is to ignore the very nature of what it means to create. Lifting his sketches higher, he fought against the rising tide of doubt. Each ink line etched deeper meaning, vivid connections to his past and paths yet untraveled. He wasn't just sharing about his mother anymore, he was claiming his place in this world, colored by pain and vibrancy alike. Yet, the stranger's visage did not falter. And what happens when others don't see your brilliance? When they criticize your work? Can you withstand the heat? The query hung in the air like a thundercloud, pregnant with uncertainty. The truth cut deeper than any rebuttal. The fear of rejection lurked there, quietly feasting on every ounce of self-worth he'd begun to stitch together. Would he buckle in the face of criticism? Could he withstand the scrutiny of the world destined to judge his work? Somewhere inside, he recognized that this was the crucible that forced transformation. He could not expect acceptance without navigating the chaos of dissent. I'm ready, he asserted, his voice firm. I will face whatever comes next. My art is my truth, and for once in my life, I refuse to hide. As Michael stood there, something shifted within him. The crowd cheered, their admiration building like a crescendo against the backdrop of tension. He was on the precipice, teetering between vulnerability and resilience, daring to confront his demons head-on. But amidst this newfound strength lay a nagging question. What if the fallout was more than just criticism? What if his art didn't resonate as he hoped? What if he failed in his endeavor to rise above the hate? His mind raced with the implications, and he realized this declaration was just the beginning. With every brushstroke, with every chance he took, he knew there would be more shadows to face. Are you truly willing to risk it all? The stranger pressed, the challenge lingering in the air. Michael's heart raced, and he could practically taste the bitterness of self-doubt creeping back. He had taken a step into the light, but the shadows were still lurking. Would he maintain that courage, or would he retreat into the safety of anonymity he once knew? In that moment, he understood that conquering oneself was often the greatest battle of all. And as he prepared to confront the cascade of potential fallout, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of a greater revelation, one that demanded more from him than he was prepared to give. As he faced the crowd, and the weight of uncertainty bore down on him again, he sensed a pivotal choice looming just beyond reach. Could he continue down this path, or would fear steer him back into the shadows he had fought so fervently to escape? The moment hung there, suspended in time, as Michael's eyes locked onto the skeptic. He could feel the fire of determination intensifying in his chest, almost burning away the remnants of doubt. The world around him began to recede, the swirling whispers faded to a dull roar. All that remained was that challenge echoing in his mind, almost reverberating like a heartbeat. Are you truly willing to risk it all? Rising to the challenge, he straightened his back, recalling every moment in his life that had molded him, every criticism that had stung but also propelled him forward. He could feel the pulse of fear attempting to worm its way in, but the memory of his sketches, the labor, the creativity, and the unapologetic truth of his experiences fortified him. This was more than just a presentation, it was a declaration of self, an irrevocable claim to his identity. I refuse to be defined by that label, he declared, louder now, the conviction in his voice cutting through the atmosphere once more, drawing the crowd back in with rapt attention. What matters is the passion I put into my work. Each piece is a reflection of who I am, of every sleepless night, every tear shed, and every moment of joy. If I am an artist, then I will embrace that fully, despite what anyone else believes. He could see the glimmer of surprise in some eyes, a flicker of respect as they began to grasp the depth of his words. Even the skeptic shifted slightly, perhaps reconsidering. Michael felt a rush of adrenaline, a sense of connection with these people, a blend of fear and triumph, vulnerability and strength. This wasn't simply about showcasing talent, it was about unmasking himself. It dawned on him that vulnerability had its own power, a weapon against judgment. He was no longer just an observer in this room, he was a participant in a dance of creation and criticism, one where he controlled the rhythm. But as he savored the shifting tides of the crowd's support, a darker thought crept in once more. What if acceptance eluded him? What if behind this moment of courage lay a cascade of rejection waiting to be unleashed? Hadn't he always been at odds with fear? Can you withstand the heat? The stranger's earlier words echoed in his mind, a taunting specter of doubt. The truth grazed against the edges of his consciousness. Every artist faced critics, faced rejection. Art was subjective, it invited discussion, and often, disagreement. And therein lay the lesson he had been avoiding. This struggle was integral to the process of creation itself. It was in this realization that his focus sharpened. Instead of envisioning rejection, he needed to welcome it. He refused to let the potential for criticism deter him. If anything, he would utilize that energy to enhance his craft. Time narrowed down to a singular focus. Michael breathed deeply, grounding himself. I understand that not everyone will see my vision. But I am here to express my truth, and if I can evoke a single emotion, make someone feel seen or understood, then I will have succeeded. The murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, a subtle but growing wave of support washing over the room. He felt like he was morphing into something more than just a man sharing sketches. He was a creator, a vessel, opting to take emotional risks in the name of artistic honesty. As the crowd's energy surged, pushing against the walls of uncertainty, Michael felt elated. A sense of liberation coursed through him. But then, as quickly as euphoria settled, the specter of loneliness re-emerged. What if he poured everything into this next phase, and it still meant nothing to those he sought validation from? That question loomed large. Could he truly stand firm in his art amid potential fallout? Aware that he had only just started down an uncharted path, Michael made a pact with himself. He would write without compromise, create without fear. He would face critics not with defenses but with openness, inviting dialogue rather than setting forth his armor. The moment culminated with applause that penetrated through his tumultuous thoughts, giving him courage to consider the next step. What would happen when he unveiled his most personal piece yet? Would he still grasp the courage he felt now? As the applause faded, Michael's heart raced anew. The audience's support ignited a fresh pulse of determination, forging a path ahead. But the looming question remained, could he truly face the judgment of his most intimate expressions? The very thought hung there, almost tantalizingly close, daring him to explore unknown depths and confront his greatest fears head-on. Michael stood amidst the lingering applause, but the noise felt like a distant echo against the backdrop of his mental battleground. A tempest raged within him. Hope mingled dangerously with fear, pushing him toward an unseen precipice. The enthusiastic reception had been a balm to his fraying nerves, yet the pathway to authenticity demanded more. Each sketch, he realized, had morphed into a heartfelt narrative, one in which he would need to dig deeper than he ever had before. With a resolve forged in the fire of his declaration, Michael returned to the studio, where the walls seemed to close in with every passing moment. His next piece needed to be honest, unflinching, and true to his identity. But even now, faced with that demand, doubt clawed at him relentlessly. Was he truly capable of baring his soul for the world to see? A specter of vulnerability, delicate yet intimidating, loomed large. He pulled out a blank canvas, staring at it as if it held the answers he craved. The emptiness beckoned him, a silent challenge, stirring a mix of excitement and trepidation. What experiences would serve as brush strokes in this new creation? The forced smiles, the struggles of parenthood, the streaks of joy mixed with sorrow, these life nuances danced around him like flickering shadows, begging for expression. As he sat there with a palette in hand, a thought churned within him. This was not merely an artistic endeavor, it was a confrontation with himself. Restlessness settled behind his eyes, urging him into action. He realized that to make genuine art, he needed to explore those very memories he often hesitated to touch, the moments of profound love and gut-wrenching fear born from being a father. What happened next felt almost automatic. As his brush dipped into paint, the vibrant colors began to bleed across the canvas. He started with basic strokes but soon found himself lost in the kaleidoscope of memories flooding back. Images of late nights comforting a teething child, playful afternoons, mundane routines twisted into a tapestry of emotional highs and lows, all of it became alive on the canvas. Yet, familiarity bred insecurity. Each stroke also unlocked a wave of vulnerability, a risk that threatened to drown him. Would it resonate? Would it ignite empathy or invoke the same skepticism that had shadowed him in the past? As anxiety wrapped tighter around his chest, he confronted the inevitable contradiction of being an artist. Creation demanded exposure, yet exposure risked heartbreak. The hours slipped away unnoticed, the play of color against color revealing an imaginary seed of inner conflict. He could feel his heart racing, exhilaration clashing with dread. This was his truth, but what if it didn't connect? What if the world dismissed his story, reducing his struggles to mere observations? In that moment of reckoning, a realization sparked. Whether they embraced or rejected his expression, this was his journey to navigate. Each brushstroke was an act of courage, a declaration to himself. It didn't matter how it was received, what mattered was that he had the audacity to express the rawness of his experience. Finally, as he took a step back to assess his nearly completed piece, a flicker of exhilaration surged through him. There was beauty in the imperfection, a sense of authenticity radiating from the chaos of colors. Deep down, he felt a surge of belief. His art was valid, not for its acceptance, but for the very act of creation. However, as night enveloped the studio, a chilling thought struck him. Would his vulnerability be met with open arms, or would he stand exposed to the biting cold of judgment? The reality of his artistic offer weighed heavily on him, a potent reminder of the impending unveiling. With a mix of anxiety and anticipation, Michael set a date. He would present this piece, his most authentic yet, to a selected few, a test of his courage and commitment to his artistry. The air crackled with tension, but the promise of growth loomed ahead. What awaited him when the veil lifted? Could his journey into the depths of vulnerability yield reassurance and validation, or would it lead him into the heart of his darkest fears? The crossroads loomed, inviting him forward into the unknown abyss. Would he plunge into the depths, or allow fear to tether him to safety? Michael's heart thudded loudly as the day of the reveal drew nearer. Each ticking second echoed the weight of his decision. He had managed to create a piece reflecting his struggles and joys as a father, but the looming threat of judgment gnawed at him. He spent sleepless nights going over every detail in his mind, the colors, the emotions, the hidden meanings embedded in the strokes. Beyond presenting art, he was bearing his soul, and that was profoundly different. The idea of having others peer into that sacred space terrified him, yet he understood that this was essential for his growth. Facing that fear was part of his journey. As he prepared the studio, every brush against the wood of the easel felt monumental. The soft sunlight filtering through the windows illuminated the piece, casting different reflections and shadows, akin to his circulating doubts. He took a deep breath, trying to push away the thoughts that threatened to overwhelm him. What if they don't understand? He murmured, almost pleading with the canvas to respond. Yet the silence that followed was deafening, amplifying the fear that whispered in his ear. In a moment of reflection, surrounded by the remnants of his artistic journey, he recalled his first foray into painting. A simple project in high school had sprouted a passion, but back then, his art had merely scratched the surface of who he was. This piece was layers deep. It stood on the foundation of life experiences, parallels of joy, struggle, and triumph. Could he share this complex narrative without disclosing too much of himself? Was he prepared to have strangers dissect a part of his essence? With the event creeping closer, he threw himself into the logistics. Inviting friends and family had felt right weeks ago, but now, it seemed like an agonizing decision. He debated the validity of every invitation, wondering if attendance would encourage support or amplify scrutiny. Would they be kind in their honesty, or could they wield it like a weapon? In search of solace, he turned to the one person who had always offered him insight, his mother. A bastion of wisdom, she had witnessed his artistic journey with a mix of pride and concern. As he confided in her, he shared his fears surrounding exposure and judgment. "Michael, the beauty of art lies in its imperfections. If you fear rejection, remember that authenticity speaks louder than perfection. What you create is a reflection of your path, and that has value regardless of how it's received." Her words reverberated in his mind, coaxing clarity amidst the storm of doubt. After their talk, he felt a tentative surge of resolve. His journey was his own, and now, more than ever, he needed to reclaim the narrative. The art was meant to open a dialogue, not lock him in a cage of insecurity. As the reveal approached, he prepared himself not only to showcase his piece but to embrace the vulnerability inherent in that moment. An acceptance bloomed in him. If he could share his truth, he could also learn from the reactions that followed. In those final moments leading up to the gathering, an unexpected question flickered in his mind. What if this was more than just a reveal? What if it transformed into an opportunity for genuine connection with those he cared for? Looking toward the canvas one last time, Michael whispered, "This is for me." The time had come to step into the light. Taking a cautious breath, he grasped the door handle, feeling the familiar tension rise anew. With each turn of the handle, he was about to confront something greater than simply sharing his art. Had he truly prepared himself for what lay beyond that threshold? Would the audience see not just a painting but the rawness of his truth? As he stepped into the room filled with anticipation, he fought the urge to retreat, the weight of his decision pressing upon him heavier than ever. But he had made a promise to himself. It was time to face his vulnerabilities. What revelations awaited him on the other side? The moment Michael crossed the threshold, the energy in the room washed over him. The chatter of familiar voices filled the space, but all he could feel was the core of anxiety pulsing within him. The polished floors amplified the sounds, each footstep echoing his internal struggle. This social labyrinth, filled with friends, family, and strangers, felt like both sanctuary and battleground. He positioned himself against the wall for a moment, scanning the crowd as they interacted over drinks and hors d'oeuvres. Laughter ebbed and flowed, yet he felt distinct separate. It was as if he wore an invisible cloak of vulnerability while everyone else radiated comfort. Despite the inviting atmosphere, the shadows of his doubts loomed larger than the light. What if they scrutinized the painting and scrutinized him, too? Michael glanced towards the easel where his canvas stood, bathed in soft light like a beacon. The painting whispered layers of truth, yet he feared that what lay bare would invite comments not rooted in understanding but judgment. He had short-circuited his initial confidence. "Michael, come join us," called Carla, his old high school art teacher, her smile contagious as she waved him over. Sunlight danced along her silver hair, and he found a sliver of reassurance in her warmth. Would she understand the risk he had taken? He took a breath, pushing away the familiar fear that tried to entangle him. There was an artful bravery beneath her call, the kind that reminded him of why he had started painting in the first place. He stepped toward her and a group of familiar faces. As they chatted, their interest in his work igniting questions within him. In that moment, a flicker of determination emerged. There was value in his story, in the art that reflected not just his identity as a father but the complexities involved in that relationship. Perhaps it was time to embrace not just the narrative he crafted in his painting, but also the narrative he would share in conversation. "What inspired you to create this piece?" one of his mother's friends asked, clearly intrigued. This was the moment Michael had dreaded, yet here it was a chance to engage with his truth. "It's a reflection of my journey as a dad, navigating joy and struggle," he began, surprising himself with the clarity of his voice, which carried an underlying conviction he didn't know he possessed. In that instant, something shifted. With every word he spoke, he leaned deeper into authenticity, feeling a magnetic pull toward his own vulnerability. The audience listened intently, their expressions growing from curiosity to empathy. As he spoke, clarity emerged. Sharing was liberating, weaving connections where fear had once created barriers. After sharing insights, his intrinsic validation sharpened. He felt less like an exposed nerve and more like a storyteller entrusted with a mission. For the first time, anxiety receded, replaced by the thrill of sincerity. They were not merely observers, but participants in the resonance of his journey. As words flowed, he noticed fragments of the crowd gravitating towards his canvas. Each step they took was a surge toward a deeper connection with his experience. The anxiety that had gripped him began to wane, transformed into something akin to hope, a belief that this exchange could enrich both him and those who were there. But just as Michael's growing confidence started to settle in, a figure from the past emerged. He recognized the face, Jonathan, a fellow artist whose critiques had haunted him in the past. With every step Jonathan took toward the painting, the taste of assurance twisted into apprehension once more. How would he react? Would his words wield the same heavy weight they did years ago, shattering the newfound connections Michael was just beginning to forge? As Jonathan approached the painting, Michael's heart raced. Was he ready for this confrontation? Would it anchor him or prove to be yet another test of his resolve? It was time to face not just the judgment of the canvas but the judgment of his past as well. Michael's breath slowed as he locked eyes with Jonathan, the air thickening with unspoken tension. Jonathan, with his striking features and an air of self-assuredness, had always seemed larger than life, his critiques lingering like shadows whenever Michael had tried to paint or pursue art seriously. The years had brought changes for them both, but insecurities can resurface as easily as old memories. Jonathan approached the canvas with a measured grace. The audience's murmurs faded, all that remained was the sound of Michael's pulse thumping in his ears. Was this the moment his past would once again eclipse his progress? "What do you think?" Michael asked, unable to suppress the tremble in his voice, the question hanging like a lifeline in the air. He had opened himself to the crowd, yes, but could he extend that same openness to Jonathan, the person who had once made him feel so small? With calculated calmness, Jonathan examined the artwork, his brow furrowing slightly. Michael's heart clenched. A critique was inevitable, but at this moment, he was desperate for understanding, not just judgment. "It's interesting," Jonathan finally said, his tone neutral but probing. Michael struggled to read the expression on his face. Had he noticed the imperfections? The moments where doubt seeped into strokes? Or had the essence of his emotions resonated, despite them? "You've really dug deep here. It's more personal than I expected." The unexpected praise landed heavy, blending relief with confusion. Did Jonathan truly appreciate the vulnerability he had laid bare? Michael's instincts told him to be wary, but the simplicity of Jonathan's observation caught him off guard. "Thank you. It's about my journey as a father, trying to reconcile the challenges I face with the joys," he replied, voice steadier. The visible softness in Jonathan's features contradicted the sharp critiques of the past, and Michael clung to the realization that even perceived antagonists could evolve. Perhaps Jonathan had confronted his own fears or regrets along his artistic path. "Yeah," Jonathan said, leaning in closer, his gaze lingering on specific segments of the painting. "The colors reflect a lot, there's despair, but also a hope that's really palpable. Have you thought about showcasing more work?" This piece has a lot of potential. The compliment validated not just the artwork but Michael's own evolution. He had resisted the growth he had achieved, shrouding himself in past failures instead of embracing the artist he was becoming. I haven't thought of that, he stammered, the magnetic pull toward confidence stronger. For a fleeting moment, Jonathan seemed like a mirror, reflecting not just Michael's past vulnerabilities but also the potential of his future. Could this moment spark a shift in Michael's artistic life? A chance to break through insecurities that too often held him captive? Perhaps it's time for all of us to grow, don't you think? Jonathan suggested, his smile no longer one of criticism, but one of camaraderie. That small shift in energy prompted a revelation within Michael. He could pivot the narrative in his mind from vulnerability as a weakness to vulnerability as a shared strength. He was increasingly aware that difficult conversations led to growth, pushing the boundaries of his world further than he had imagined. However, as insight flooded in, Michael felt a flicker of discontent. What if he put himself out there, only to find that the acceptance he sought was nothing more than a facade? What lay beyond this initial success? Would the echoes of approval last, or would they inevitably crumble? He looked around the room, taking in Carla's encouraging gaze, the wonder in the audience's eyes, and then back to Jonathan, sensing something profound brewing between them, a burgeoning understanding. Yet, that knowledge didn't make the prospect less terrifying. As the moment hung in the balance, a quiet voice deep within challenged him. Was he ready to confront his full potential? The confrontation with Jonathan had drawn him closer to clarity, but it also hinted at broader horizons that awaited him. It was a delicate reminder that growth demanded not just bravery but action. Michael considered his next steps carefully, a plan forming amidst the uncertainty. With the art world sprawling out in front of him, much like an uncharted canvas, the critical choice weighed on him: would he leap? Before he could dwell too long, Jonathan leaned in closer, eyes sparking with purpose. Michael, I want to talk to you about a project I'm working on. I think you'd be perfect for it. As Jonathan spoke, anticipation surged in Michael. The length to which this conversation could stretch felt infinite, yet it also defined a moment of monumental risk. Would he embrace this new opportunity, or would hesitation stifle his eager heart? The moment of truth hovered, and Michael's resolve began to tighten. He sensed that his fears could either forge connections or sever them entirely. The future pursued him relentlessly. Now the question remained: where would he allow it to lead him next? The gallery buzzed with anticipation as Michael prepared to unveil his newest piece, a culmination of the emotional journey he had embarked upon since that day in the corporate lobby. The moment had arrived, not just for validation through his art but as a testament to his rebirth as an artist and as a father. With a determined stride, he stepped onto the small stage, and the chatter slowly faded into an attentive hush. Every eye drew toward him, curiosity mingled with hope. The vivid colors of his canvas stood behind him like a ready army, prepared to showcase all he had endured. He could feel the weight of both expectation and his own history coursing through him, every missed opportunity and every ounce of fear coalescing into this single moment. Thank you all for being here, he began, voice steady, colored by promise. Tonight, I am both grateful and nervous to share this part of myself with you. He gestured toward the canvas, a mosaic reflecting joy, heartache, and resilience, the echoes of sleepless nights spent on fatherhood interwoven with the vibrant spirit of creation. As he unveiled the artwork, a wave of emotion cascaded over him. Every brushstroke represented the hurdles he had overcome, infused with the lessons learned from his mother's sacrifices. This wasn't merely a piece of art, it was his identity reborn, an open letter to the world. A soft gasp rippled through the crowd as they absorbed the complexity of the image. Michael watched faces change, and he felt the undeniable shift from skepticism to intrigue. Absorbing this new energy was both exhilarating and daunting. He had stepped into what he had once feared: authenticity, and it illuminated the room in a way that validation never could. I've learned that vulnerability is not weakness, he continued, feeling the passion swell within him. It's strength. My journey as an artist is tied directly to my identity as a father. In my art, I want to express the beauty of those struggles, the chaos, and the love that binds us. The audience was rapt, nodding in understanding. Encouragement floated in the air, and for the first time, Michael felt solid, the foundation of his identity firm beneath him. As he engaged with the viewers about the piece, sharing stories that inspired each brushstroke, he was met with warmth and support. Conversations blossomed around him, and he found himself welcomed into a circle of validation he had never anticipated. The previous fears succumbed to an exhilarating tide of acceptance that swept across the room. Then, Jonathan approached, the skepticism of the past replaced with a look of admiration. "This piece is raw and powerful, Michael. You've taken bold risks, and they've paid off. Would you consider collaborating on future projects? I think your voice deserves a wider audience," he proposed genuinely. Heart swelling with a mixture of pride and disbelief, Michael realized the weight of that invitation. Here stood the embodiment of his past doubts, transformed into an ally, offering a pathway that could bridge personal expression with the artistic community he had longed to join. Yes, he found himself declaring before doubt could temper his enthusiasm. Absolutely. In that instant, he grasped that he was not just surviving anymore, he was thriving. He felt the subtle but profound shift inside him, a solid confidence, an established competence born from years of struggle and evolution. The evening moved forward, each discussion building connections that solidified his place within the community. This was not merely an event, it had become a celebration of transformation both for him and everyone present. Later, as he stood admiring his piece, he reflected on how far he had come. From the janitor shunned in the corporate world to a confidently emerging artist embraced by a community, he recognized the profound impact of vulnerability and authenticity. The shadows of the past no longer dictated his path. Instead, they had enriched it. Michael stood tall, a newly recognized artist, not just for the skills he had honed, but for the unwavering self-acceptance he claimed. The journey had not been easy, but it was undeniably worth it. As he glanced back at the crowd, laughter and thoughtful conversations filling his ear, he felt alive with anticipation for what lay ahead, a future he was ready to embrace, brimming with potential and purpose. As he stepped away from the canvas, the reflections of hope, dreams, and courage glimmered brightly in his heart. It was a rebirth. He was ready not just to be seen but to thrive. If you don't want to miss out on exclusive emotional stories like this one, subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to fuel our algorithm and help others find their paths of overcoming. Comment your reactions and theories about Michael's journey and his transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this story of overcoming and rebirth. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting such incredible art and narratives.